Dude, if you hate your 9 to 5, you need to have an exit plan, because showing up to the office every day and not knowing where your life is going.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Dayton View. In today's video, Gen Z shares their thoughts on how expensive everything feels in 2026 and why it can seem so difficult to move forward in life. They talk about the rising cost of living, financial pressure, and the challenges of trying to build stability while navigating today's economy. This conversation explores the realities many young people are facing right now, from housing and everyday expenses to the feeling that progress takes much longer than it used to.
What happens when an entire generation of people cannot enter a job market because entry-level jobs have collapsed? People don't understand that entry-level jobs provide so much more than just like a initial income. They also give young workers the chance to learn by doing. The implicit bargain is very much breaking down because of AI, and it's also reshaping the idea of what entry-level even means. The unemployment rate for college graduates is very high. Entry-level job postings is very low, especially in industries like tech and marketing and finance. Precisely those white-collar fields where Gen Z graduates expected to build their careers. Like, that's kind of what they went to college for. And, we're seeing how companies are discovering and like, oh, AI can handle these tasks that maybe they traditionally assigned to junior employees. And of course, this creates a potential paradox that's only going to get worse. Employers still want experienced mid-level candidates, but those candidates eventually have to come from somewhere. So if those entry points disappear, so does the pipeline of future talent. We're essentially pulling up the ladder behind us. And the consequences extend beyond like the individual. Young people locked out of career track jobs are losing income, yes, but they're also losing the skills that come with working alongside experienced colleagues. How do you learn some of the soft skills, like navigating office politics, handling difficult conversations, from a YouTube tutorial? I mean, so much of this is very much learned by doing. And so then what happens when young people don't have access to that? We already are starting to see a response in young people, pivoting towards entrepreneurship, freelancing, credential stacking, but that might not translate in the same way as, other types of entry-level jobs. And also not everyone has the resources or risk tolerance to do that. And so a labor market that only rewards those who can self-fund their own training or go off on their own or have the backing to do that will just continue to deepen those inequalities.
What do you think about this?
Gen Z have to look at houses that cost $500,000, cars that cost $40,000, a degree that'll get you $80,000 in debt. How in the world are we supposed to do anything with that? I was trying to buy a car and I had such a hard time trying to find good ways to pay it off. And one of the few places I found that actually gave a good interest rate on my loan for a high quality one was Credify. And dude, we are so cooked.
We are cooked, indeed.
Gen Z isn't lazy or unmotivated. They are rationally adapting to an economy where traditional milestones have become mathematically impossible at traditional ages. I really like this Business Insider piece about 25 being the new 21, and it reveals something really interesting around how economic reality shapes generational behavior. When the path to adulthood becomes more expensive and less certain, young people adapt by taking longer to walk it. And the data in the article talks through, how college costs have gone up, entry-level wages have stagnated, housing prices have gone up a lot more relative to income. The traditional timeline for independence becomes more fraught rather than something that just kind of everybody did on a pre-described path. And, previous generations could reasonably expect that working hard in your early 20s would lead to some sort of financial independence. But today's young people, are often seeing that working really hard in your early 20s might lead to financial survival, with independence coming later, if at all. And that's why we're seeing a lot of trends of younger people living with their parents longer, taking longer to kind of reach some of those traditional milestones, etc. And what might look like arrested development can often be very strategic, right? Like, why rush into paying a ton of rent when you're only making $35,000 a year? Like, why not just live with your parents instead? Why get married and start a family when you can't afford healthcare for yourself? And this delayed timeline also reflects changed family dynamics. When parents, especially like older boomer parents, can provide that financial support that previous generations maybe couldn't offer, staying at home longer becomes a very rational wealth building strategy rather than a potential sign of failure. And the cultural narrative around this shift is particularly interesting. I think some older generations interpret this delayed independence as laziness or entitlement, but they're missing how economic conditions have fundamentally changed the risk-reward calculations around traditional adult milestones. From a financial psychology perspective, Gen Z's approach might actually be more mature than previous generations. They're making decisions based on mathematical reality rather than cultural expectations. But the challenge is that this delayed timeline can create its own psychological stress. When you're 25 and still living with your parents, it's hard not to feel like you're behind, even if you're adapting to these circumstances that you're currently in. So it's really important to remember that generational differences in financial behavior usually reflect economic conditions more than cultural values. So when the economy changes, rational behavior changes too.
Is she right? Let me know down below in the comments.
At this point, I seriously think Gen Z is just screwed. In 2026, Gen Z just simply earns way less than it costs to survive. The average Gen Zer makes about $25K a year, which is around $21,000 a month, and spends basically all of it on bills or rent. Nearly half of Gen Z runs out of money before the end of the month ends, and that's not just budgeting, that's just survival at that point. And don't get me started on student loan debt, because the average Gen Zer also has about $30K of student loan debt on top of all of that. We are spending more on essentials than any other previous generation, and wages just keep going down, and the cost of living just keeps going up. You're not failing in life. The system is just completely fucked us over. Budgeting does help, don't get me wrong. I still use mine to budget and track all of my expenses, but the system is still failing us.
I just need somebody else to tell me that they're living paycheck to paycheck and putting themselves into credit card debt out of necessity, not because of fun. I am 28 years old. I work a decent paying job. I love my job. I make good income. We have no kids, me and my fiance, and we're still barely scraping by. Our bills are paid, but we can't save any money. We can't go on vacation. I mean, we do little things here and there, but realistically, we don't really do anything. And we still live paycheck to paycheck, okay? I don't understand how people with kids are doing this. Props to y'all. I mean, seriously, the utmost respect, because I feel like I'm drowning and I only have cats. Any money that we're able to save ends up getting spent on the car, or the cat has to go to the vet, or one of us has a medical emergency. It's just gone. It's gone. I don't understand. We don't live beyond our means. Are we all just collectively putting ourselves into debt? Because I don't know what else to do.
Is this the reality of young couples navigating in 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Okay, serious question real quick. How are we supposed to afford life? I have 3 kids. And my husband and I both have full-time incomes, and I still am puzzled. Like, it's an enigma. Like, for real, why? I just left Walmart and got the bare minimum for groceries, like bare minimum, and cheap stuff. Baby, we ain't eating salmon and steak, baby. We eating hamburger helper, some Doritos, like we getting like the Dino Nuggies, okay? Great value brand. Now, I did get 3 pairs of kids shoes because my kids are starting back to school and they need some new sneakers. But tell me why I got the bare minimum in groceries and 3 pairs of sneakers, and I'm coming out just shy of $300. There's no way. This is crazy. Like, I had children on the understanding that if I worked hard and put my pennies away, that we would be okay. And now I'm feeling not okay. And then my intrusive thoughts just come in and they start thoughting, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I have 3 kids that are all very close together, which means they're all going to be in college at the same time. How in the world am I supposed to send them to college? Now, don't get me wrong. I know that, like, it's completely normal for people to just take out student loans and do all that, but I was lucky enough that my mother paid my way through college semester by semester, like the strong single mom she is, by making sacrifices because she didn't want me to have all that debt. And while I am not naive enough to know that I may not be able to do that for 3 children, I still hope to be able to help, ease that burden. And I'm like, huh? How? Literally how? Mama, I don't know how much harder mama can hustle, okay? Mama is making the moolah, and the moolah is not spreading thinly, and I can't make it reach all corners. It's crazy.
People are still struggling, Even with 2 incomes, this is ridiculous.
I need to have a vent session for a second about the state of affairs in this country. So I have 2 adult children. One is 18 going on 19 and the other one is 21. My 18-year-old is working currently as an HVAC apprentice and working on getting certified, but he's making $16 an hour, which I live in a small to mid-sized Missouri town, so that's pretty typical around here. Wages are, low compared to a lot of places, but so is the cost of living. But he would also not like to be living at home with mom forever. He's more of an independent, autonomous person, so apartment living is not for him at all. He wants a place where he can have his truck and his dirt bikes and be able to work on motors and have the freedom to do what he wants with the place and also be able to have all of his stuff. And at this point, honestly, renting a house would cost more than a mortgage payment anyway, but he's been looking for houses and just trying to figure out what he can afford and what he can do. And he found this place that was only $125,000, which is dirt cheap around here. That just doesn't exist anymore, but it had no basement. It was on a slab foundation, I think, and probably needed some work, which he is naturally talented at that stuff. He works in HVAC. He's very mechanically inclined. He can do this stuff. So he's not afraid of a fixer-upper. Found out that the main reason it was priced so cheap is because it was in a flood zone. So it was a no anyway. But keep in mind, $125,000 house in this economy. And when we looked up to see if he did a 5% down payment on this thing with, your insurance and PMI and taxes and everything, his payment would still be $1,100 a month for a cheap piece of crap house. And just the look of absolute dread on his face when he realized how completely unaffordable and unattainable it is for him to be able to buy a house and live on his own. Now, my oldest son just turned 21. He's been waiting to turn 21 because he wants to get into the cannabis industry. And it's just like the alcohol industry, where if you want to be a brewer or a bartender, you have to be 21 in order to do it. So this past week, Thursday, he interviewed for a job with a grower. And just a couple of days ago, he was offered the position and officially accepted it. And in that time, less than a week, we decided to start a war with Iran. And so when he interviewed for the job, gas prices were around $2.50 a gallon where I'm at, and now they are already at $3 a gallon and climbing. So just in the time between when he interviewed for this job and when he accepted this job, gas prices have gone up 50 cents a gallon, and they're not done climbing yet. And this is an issue because this job, there's a lot of dispensaries here in town where if he had, ended up there, he'd probably be a little bit better off. But this was the job opening that was available at the time for him to get into the industry. And it is a farm, which is 30 miles up the interstate from where we live. So now he is going to be driving one way to work 30 miles at a time when gas prices are going through the roof, because we decided it was a good idea to start a completely unwarranted, unjustified, and unnecessary war with Iran. And I'm now sitting here thinking about my own situation, where my own currently hourly wage is, and considering if I was their age, if I was just starting out. So thinking about buying the same house that I live in right now at its current value, at current interest rates, with the same % down payment that I paid for this house back in 2017. And I realized that my payment would be double what it currently is. And I, as a 40-year-old woman who has been working for 24 years of my life, could not afford this place on my own. At 40 years old, I would need a roommate in order to live in this very modest, 1,300 square foot, 1968 ranch style home. It's not a fancy house by any stretch. It's what most people would consider to be essentially a starter home by today's standards. And I could not afford it on my own on my current wages. So my question is, how the hell are we expecting these young kids to do it? For someone to start out, even in my area, in rural Missouri, they would have to make $30 an hour in order to be earning a living wage, in order to live on their own and support themselves without the help of a spouse or a roommate, just for a single person to live and make it on their own, to be able to afford a vehicle payment, vehicle insurance, a mortgage or rent payment, and all of the utilities and groceries and cell phone bills and stuff that go along with just living your life. That's no fun stuff. It's just to live. They would need to make $30 an hour. Meanwhile, we have a government that is more interested in starting wars and harassing other countries and harassing immigrants that are living in this country than they are with their own people, than they are with helping the working class in any way, shape, or form with any kind of meaningful legislation or reform. We have a do-nothing Congress that is sitting on their hands and doing absolutely nothing to help any of the working class people. I'm mad about it for myself, but I'm even more mad about it for my children. Something needs to change. Something's got to give. And frankly, at the midterms, like, it would be great if the Democrats are able to take over, because at least they'll do something to stop the nonsense that is happening in the executive branch that is going on unchecked. But are they going to do anything to actually help the working class people? At the end of the day, even the Democrats are doing the absolute bare minimum to be able to claim that they are for the working class, because they, right along with the Republicans, are taking money from wealthy campaign donors, and any policy, any legislation that they pass ultimately is going to help them and not us. So where does this end? How far does this go before we, the people, cannot afford to live no matter what age we are?
People are still struggling, even with 2 incomes. This is ridiculous.
In case you don't realize just how bad the economy is, no one is buying anything anymore. Oh wait, sorry, not no one. Actually, half of all consumer spending for the first time in history is just the top 10% of American households. You know what that means? Our economy is literally held up by wealthy people because they are the only people who can afford to buy shit. And by the way, this doesn't mean that wealthy people are so amazing because they're helping our economy grow. No, why do you think they're the only people that could afford anything? Don't even get me started on the ultra wealthy people, because get this, since the 1980s, billionaires' wealth has grown by 4,500%, while wages only grew by 15%. And while workers' wages only grew 15%, rent went up 400%. College tuition went up 1,200%. Groceries went up 300%. So who's benefiting here? And here's a hint, it's probably not you. It's probably not your family, it's probably not your friends. So why are you defending them so hard? Oh, I think I'll be a billionaire one day, is what you say to yourself. Get the fuck over yourself.
Young people don't have any money. So I work full-time in restaurants and bars. I'm a musician and I play in Florida, and I see firsthand the crowds that go to these places. And I can tell you, over the course of the past 5 or so years, the demographic has shifted entirely from all people of all ages to only people like 55 and up. So much so, I have had to change my set list to all old music, which is fine. There's a lot of good old music, but I used to play stuff like John Mayer, Coldplay, stuff you'd hear on like contemporary top 40 radio. That is all considered too new. If I play a Jack Johnson Banana Pancake song, that is too new for everybody. They won't know it. Doesn't matter if I play on the beach, doesn't matter if I play downtown, doesn't matter if I play in a suburban bar somewhere. It is all the same age. And I think the reason for this is nobody younger than that has any money to go out to these restaurants. Nobody has the expendable income to be buying a beer at a bar or getting a hamburger at a restaurant. As someone who's been doing this for about 15 years now, I've played over 3,000 gigs, okay? I have sang Wonderwall over that many times. So I have been around the block, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that it really is only 55 and up is the age that goes out to restaurants. The only young people I see are the people working behind the bar. We are seeing the wealth disparity in real time between the generational gap. But like, what's gonna happen? Are like the 55 and up crowd the only people that are upholding restaurants and keeping them in business? Like, what happens after? You know, like, if no one can afford after these people aren't going anymore, like, what happens to restaurants? You know what I mean? But anyway, look at this Florida sunset. That's pretty cool. That's timeless.
I don't get how people afford life without a job. I can't even afford it with a job. I have direct deposits, a schedule, responsibilities, and somehow the math still isn't mathing at the end of the month. I mean, every month I pay bills and my account looks surprised, like where'd it go? I was there the whole time, and I don't even understand what happened. So meanwhile, there are people out there, unemployed, calm, traveling, eating out regularly. I'm employed, and I'm still budgeting mentally in the grocery store. Like, I check the prices like I'm studying for a final exam. I mean, I'm having cold sweats and flashbacks, you know. So I just want to know the system. Just want to know how this works. Like what do you do? Because if this is me with income, I'm afraid to see the version without it. You know, so if you're living comfortably with no job, please explain this slowly to me. I'm generally trying to learn.
Why doesn't Gen Z just save up to move out? Because Gen Z can't afford to move out. Do you ever think about that? Grandma and Grandpa Boomer bought a house with their summer job because it literally costed them pennies. And now they want to sell it for $1 million. Their little 1,000 square foot shed, they want to turn around and sell that for $1 million. Or even think about how up until the 80s, most people's incomes grew at the same rate as the 1% did. And the debt to income ratio was actually manageable back then. But nah, because y'all only want to look at things at the surface level. It's easier to ask, why doesn't Gen Z just save up to buy a house, instead of asking, why have we let the system get so bad that life is actually unaffordable for the average person now?
Gen Z can't afford to move out of their childhood bedrooms. And this is not theoretical. This is now the Wall Street Journal reporting on this. And it's being echoed in my comments like this one. I love being 26 years old, having a full-time job and a master's degree, and still living at my parents' house. Our parents built their lives in an economy where one job and one mortgage could secure a home. Now, Gen Z graduates at the top of their class are sending out hundreds of job applications, getting a full-time job, and still are not able to make enough to move out of their parents' house. Because rent, unexpected expenses, and healthcare costs are draining every cent from paychecks before the next month even starts. Even the parents are reporting the same thing to the Wall Street Journal. There is no way that she could afford to move out. Housing costs are skyrocketing. Healthcare is a financial trap. Entry-level jobs are demanding years of experience, and wages are just not keeping pace. So from a very honest perspective, young adults are not failing, but the system is definitely failing them.